time it is. You know what time it is. You know whose time it is. You know what time it is. Matthew Mania, the time is his. You know what time it is. You know whose time it is.
Welcome to the Matthew Mania podcast. I'm Matthew Maschler, real estate broker who watches wrestling as if it's my job. And today I wanted to talk to you about the new Swatch release, the Royal Pop. It's Swatch's version of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. And I'm recording this the day before the release, and I've gotten a lot of questions about it. And I like answering them, and I like talking about it. And I've gotten a lot of people to say, hey, you should record this, or can you tell this to my friend or to my partner? So I just wanted to get my thoughts out here before the watch is released. So for those of you who don't know, Swatch Group, if you remember, if you're my age, Swatch is a plastic quartz watch that was very fashionable in the 80s, and Swatch Group actually owns a lot of watch brands. One of the largest watch sellers in the world. They actually own Omega, which is a very popular watch brand. I find Omega to be very similar on par with Rolex. They own Blancpain. They own Glashütte Original, Jacques Droz. They own Harry Winston. They own Breguet. They own Longines, which is a great Swiss watch brand, a good starter if someone is first getting into watches. They own Rado. They own Glashütte Union, which is similar to Glashütte Original. They own Tissot, like Longines, another Swiss watch brand. Hamilton, which has lots of really nice watches. If you ever saw Men in Black, that really cool futuristic watch that they wear in Men in Black is a Hamilton. So Swatch Group is a very large watch brand conglomerate. They own a lot of brands, and they did a collab a few years back with Omega. Now let's talk about watches for a minute. Why does someone buy any particular watch? A lot of people buy a watch for the heritage of the watch company. If you saw the F1 movie, Brad Pitt wins the Daytona 500 race, and he's offered a Rolex because Rolex and that Daytona 500 race are go hand in hand. The Rolex Daytona, one of the most famous, one of the most coveted watches out there. The Rolex Daytona, obviously, Brad Pitt rejects the Daytona in the movie. IWC pays a lot of money for this. Brad Pitt says, "No, thank you. Don't you want your watch? No, thank you. I already have one." And Brad Pitt drives off with his dad's IWC. They don't actually say that in the movie, but if we talk about the movie, you see him at night when he takes off his watch, puts it on the nightstand. There's a picture of him as a child with his dad. His dad's wearing the watch. So he is rejecting the Rolex for the IWC. That's why IWC paid all that money for the sponsorship in the movie. Also, in the James Bond movies, very famous, he's on the train, beautiful woman. It's a beautiful watch. What is it? Rolex? And James Bond answers Omega. So Omega pays a lot of money for that scene. So people buy watches for the heritage, whether that's Chopard in the racing heritage. Tag Heuer is another racing watch. Rolex obviously had a lot of innovations, and IWC and different watch brands. Zenith. Omega was the watch that the astronauts wore on their space missions, and the first watch that went to the moon on Neil Armstrong's wrist. NASA had tested out several watches. The three finalists were Longines, Omega, and Rolex, and NASA went with Omega. So a lot of people buy the watch that was the first Omega in space, or the first watch on the moon, because of that heritage. If you see the Apollo 11 movie starring Tom Hanks, where the computers failed and the astronauts had to rely on their watches to do this deep calculations, and would not have gotten home safely if they didn't have their watches. So a lot of people bank on that. So anyway, Swatch Group owns Omega, and they did a collab, a Swatch version of the Omega Moon watch called the Moon Swatch. And they did multiple colors, one for each planet. So Mars was red, and Venus was pink, and Jupiter and Saturn, and they did all the watches in that group. And the community went nuts for it. People were flipping these Swatch watches for several times what they paid. $400 watch, people were buying for $1,000, $2,000. It took about 2.5 years for supply and demand to equal out on that. Omega tried it again with Blancpain, and that was a failure. People didn't really buy it. When I say a failure, in my opinion, it was a failure. There were not lines out the door. People were not flipping those Blancpains. Possibly there was a pink one. I think that was very popular for women for Valentine's Day, etc. So anyway, but Omegas are not hard watches to get. But the Swatch version was. And a lot of critics from the watch community, people who paid $10,000 for an Omega, well, this person's buying it for $400. It's not the same watch. It's plastic. It's quartz battery. It's not a mechanical. It's not a Swiss mechanical movement. My theory at the time was this is going to turn a lot of customers, a lot of future customers, right? If someone in their 20s buys the Omega Moon Swatch, at some point in their life, they buy the real Omega. What percentage of people like that? Even 10%. Huge amount of future customers for Omega. I like to think of all the people that bought a fake Rolex on Canal Street, right? That one day buy the real Rolex. Well, it didn't take generations or years later. Sales of the Omega Moon watch, the true one, went up I think 13% that very first year. So it was a big hit on Omega's part, and quite popular. And I actually own several of these moon watches. They did do some special editions, some with Snoopy on it. Omega received from NASA the Silver Snoopy Award, which is an award that NASA gives to some of its astronauts, and they gave it to Omega as an honorary astronaut for what happened in that Apollo 11 mission. So they, on the, I think it was 35th anniversary or 30th anniversary of the mission, they launched a watch with a Snoopy on it. It wasn't an immediate hit, but became very popular. So for the 40th anniversary, they did a second edition, which also sold like hotcakes, very difficult, sold for a lot of money in the aftermarket. 45th anniversary, the third Omega Snoopy watch came out, also very popular. To this day, you cannot go into an Omega store and buy a Snoopy. It's reserved for very good customers of the Omega store. My friends out there that are interested in the Snoopy, what I find is if you are a customer of a corporate-owned store, a boutique, and you have purchase history in the boutique, it's much easier to get the Omega Moon, the Omega Snoopy, than if you're with an authorized dealer such as Weston Jewelers here in Florida, or Mayors, or Watches in Switzerland, or Bucher. The authorized dealers are getting less of those Snoopies. When they do get one in, it goes to their very, very good customers. But if you have history at an Omega boutique, corporate-owned, authorized dealer, not corporate-owned, a reseller, authorized reseller, not a secondary market reseller. So the boutiques tend to have a better chance of getting those Snoopies. So they did the Snoopy in the Swatch, and they did some special difference every month. One month they did a popcorn. One month they did, the very last one they did was an all-white watch that was only available if it was snowing in Switzerland. That was very cool. So anyway, they've done some pretty cool collaborations that Swatch did. And because it's part of the same company, Omega and Swatch, then all the profits go, whether someone's buying the Swatch or the real Omega, all the profits go to the same company. So, and like I said, the Blancpain, they still sell them. It's a good dive watch. It's a good first watch. It's a good toy watch, but it's not a Swiss watch, not a mechanical watch. So tomorrow, May 16th, the Royal Pop comes out, and it's an AP Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, done as a plastic Swatch watch with a quartz battery. And surprise everybody, that's a pocket watch. It's not actually a wristwatch. I suspect we're going to see those pocket watches hung on bags like Labubus, like bag charms. Also that people with 3D printers will make a bracelet strap for it. There is 8 different colors. There's 2 different models. So 6 of the colors are one way. 2 of the colors have a small second hand. The 2 with the small second hand, the crown where you wind the watch, is at 3 o'clock like a regular watch, and I think those will work best in a bracelet. The other 6, the crown where you wind and set the time, is at the 12 o'clock. It's a little bit unusual, but there are watches that have done that. I've seen an Omega Bullnose, Rio de Janeiro Olympics. When I talk about watch heritage, Omega, besides the Olympics, also does a lot of James Bond movies. And there's been Rolex and Casio in James Bond movies, but there's been a lot of Omegas in James Bond movies. A lot of Omega, and Omega does the timing for the Olympics. Omega is not a sponsor of the Olympics like Coca-Cola and Visa. They're actually a vendor that does the timekeeping for the Olympics. They don't do it with an Omega hand watch. They do it with computers nowadays. But Omega is a vendor for the Olympics, and in exchange, as part of their compensation, they get to use the Olympic logos on some of their watches. They always do an Olympic edition or two or multiple. So when I went to the London Olympics in 2012, just to watch, we weren't a participant. I took the kids when they're 7 or 8 years old. I got myself a nice London 2012 Omega watch, Omega Seamaster as my souvenir. But yeah, that's besides the point. But Omega does have that heritage. So what do I think is going to happen with the Royal Pop, take of the Royal Oak? People going crazy. Like the last 5 days, the lines have been forming. I've already heard that in Lincoln Road and South Beach, the police have been asking people to disperse. The Aventura store is going to open up at 9 a.m. Saturday morning instead of 10 a.m. But how do you get into the mall? Which stores open first at 8:30? And then people are going to be running around the mall trying to get this watch. People are saying it's going to sell for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know the future. I think $5,000 is hefty, because do you want to be the guy that spends $5,000 on a $450 watch, right? Like, look like a sucker? I would think you look like a sucker. I mean, $1,200, right? I don't have to wake up and go down there and fight the crowds. I'll pay $1,200 for a $500 watch. I'm saying $500 because $450 plus tax, right? And I can sleep in and do my work. Okay, that's worth a little bit, $700, right? Would I hire someone for $700 to do it, right? But to pay $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, that seems off. I don't know that people are really going to do it. You're going to hear reports of it, but I don't know that people are really going to do it. But I do know a lot of people were turned off when it was a pocket watch, not a wristwatch. You are seeing these memes and videos of people rejecting their AP and throwing it in the garbage. That makes no sense at all. This is going to have zero negative effect to AP. And AP is not owned by Swatch. It's still a family-owned company. This is going to have zero effect on AP. In fact, it's going to increase the demand for the reason that I said, that people can become more aware of the brand, and people are going to want the brand. AP Royal Oak, like Rolex, like Patek Philippe, like Hermes Birkins, has a material that I like to call unobtainium. Unobtainium is not on the periodic chart of the elements. It's just a special material that's very, very difficult to get. And when you use unobtainium in your product, it makes people want it more. So you walk into a Rolex store, they don't have anything, so you want it. You walk into an Omega store, they have everything, so maybe you don't want it. But for every Rolex Daytona, there's an Omega Speedmaster. For every Rolex Submariner, there's a diver, a Seamaster. So the Rolex and Omega, they go hand in hand. But you walk into the store, you have anything you want. Maybe you don't want it so much, right? When I got into watches, it's because, right, I didn't, just like cars, right? I don't want to buy a car brand new. I want to let someone else take that initial depreciation, buy the car 2 or 3 years old. But I was confused by Rolex, right? Why are those 2 or 3 years, those pre-owned watches, used watches, selling for more money? Well, supply and demand's out of balance. And that's because of the unobtainium. It's impossible to get a nice Rolex watch. When I started looking at watches, maybe 2018 or 19, there were Rolex watches in the window of the Rolex stores, but those weren't the ones that people wanted. The secondhand dealers had all the desirable ones. And I was actually talking to somebody today on the internet. They put their name down on the list 3 months ago, and they don't understand why they didn't get the watch. And I said, if you don't have purchase history at the jeweler, so remember, Rolex doesn't sell the watches directly to customers. They sell them to authorized dealers, jewelry stores that sell them to customers. And they're going to sell them to their good customers, someone who comes in for earrings for their wife, maybe a necklace for their mom for Mother's Day, an engagement ring. That's a good customer. That's who they're going to allocate their Rolex watches to. And even if you just want to date just with a Jubilee and with a white dial that doesn't sound like one of the most desirable watches, it could take 1.5 years or 2 years, because why would they sell to you if they could sell to one of their customers with a good purchase history? So AP Royal Oak is one of these watches. Very, very hard to get. If you go to an AP store, maybe they'll sell you Code 1159 first, then an offshore, maybe a woman's watch, and then the fourth watch is the actual one you want, the Royal Oak. And that's why some people say, hey, just buy it pre-owned, pay the premium, right? A $30,000 watch, pay $50,000 for it, but you don't have to buy a bunch of watches that you don't want to get there. So that's the trade-off. But why do people, will it devalue that watch if people can buy it for $500? It's a plastic version. right? It's not, Ferrari coming out with a Honda, right? It's Honda coming out with the Ferrari edition, a regular Honda with Ferrari badges, right? Not that Honda would do that with Ferrari, but you see like Eddie Bauer, right? Ford Expedition with an Eddie Bauer package, right? A Ferrari or Lamborghini with an Hermes interior package, right? It's not Hermes, but it's the upgrade, it's the tags. So Swatch, and now Swatch Group owning all these luxury brands, competitors of AP. Why are they doing it? Well, for AP, they actually lost some of their copyright to some of the essential designs of the Royal Oak. So there's going to be a lot more clones out there. So they might as well get some cash now and have Swatch pay a royalty for this intellectual property while they still own it before they lose it, right? They might have an immediate need for cash. You don't know. And why would Swatch do this? To help a competitor? Don't they have any other brands? Well, no. Like the Blancpain didn't sell. They don't have any other brands with the unobtainium, with the thing that's going to make people go nuts. And people are going nuts. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. I don't know when this will drop. This might drop after the release. I will keep you posted on what happens with the AP Royal Pop Swatch collaboration. Thank you for listening to us at the Matthew Mania podcast. Check out our Boca Raton Wrestling show, August 16th. Check us out at Real Estate Finder for all your real estate needs. If you want to become a real estate broker in the state of Florida, if you are a broker, want to join my team, or if you want to buy or sell a house, love you to use one of my agents. Check out CCW Wrestling School. Shout out to Gangrel, our head coach. Matthew Mania podcast, MatthewMania.com, realestatefinder.com, BocaRatonWrestling.com. Thanks for joining us.
You know what time it is. 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 Matthew Mania, the time is his. You know what time it is. You know whose time it is. You know what time it is. Matthew Mania, the time is his. Yeah, got him shook, scared, can't look. We're not afraid of the big bad wolf. First comes the right, followed by the left hook. Execute perfect, this is textbook. If you ever test, make sure you bring the best. Head into the ring with the M on my chest. Any match, bring the ladders and the tables. Lock us in the cage and nobody can save you. When it's war, I'm coming to destroy. Napalm blast, I'm coming with the noise. They chant for the king, the girls and the boys. They saying I'm the best cause they didn't have a choice. You know what time, you know what time, you know what time it is. You know what time, you know what time, you know what time it is. You know what time, you know what time, you know what time it is. You know what time, you know what time, you know what time it is.